Welcome to Decker Tech. I'm Aaron Decker, and today we're talking about the starting deck for Heiner. He is one of the two currently viable tanks for any High Madness run, and he is the slower of the two. So let's talk about him. The job of any warrior is to apply vulnerable to the enemy team, shield up your team, and apply fortify to the team. Heiner, like I said, is slow. He does not go before the enemy, so for him to apply block, he's also got to pair it with fortify. Fortify says block will roll over to the next turn. So that's why the starting guards in his deck are good. Sometimes you'll go down to 2, but you want to at least keep enough sources of fortify to make sure that you get it on the correct targets of your team, so that when you apply these intercepts, these repair armors, that they actually do it. This is less of a deal once Heiner hits level 2, but until then, you got to make sure that you have these sources of fortify for any of Heiner's block to be viable at all. So of the starting cards, we're cutting out the steel skins, and we're going to replace them with a lot lower cost stuff. We really just can't afford these 2-cost cards. And steel skin, all it does is just block up Heiner, and Heiner can block himself up pretty well. We don't really need too much of that. And all steel skin else really does is apply fortify, reinforce, which is what these repair armors are doing for us. So we're bringing in repair armors. They're just a good dispel for mark and crack. They have a decent amount of block on them, and they really just apply this reinforce. So we're going to make sure that the Heiner always has reinforce, and anyone that's going to be taking any of the physical damage. So that's usually the front line, the back line, and then after that, any random targets. You'll kind of get used to which monsters do what, whether that's frontline or backline, and what kind of damage types they do. And other than that, we need the vulnerable, so intimidates are what we want. But what we'd really like to have but can't afford is this piercing howl. But 200 shards is a high price to pay for our current difficulty. Oh, I forgot to mention, this is Max Madness. I just took Poverty off because I skipped the divinations. Usually you'll be taking the divinations. I just skipped them so you can see the basic deck without any shenanigans of who I got a good card. So this, if you can afford more shards because you're on a lower difficulty or whatnot, then I'd bring in like the Piercing Howl. I would cut out the Sunder Armor probably, and bring these repair armors. You want to upgrade these repair armors to the 0 cost to begin with. And then once you get your level 3 talent of reducing the... Or did I get these backwards? Once Heiner's level 3, you don't have to worry about Fortify. Level 2, once you get the Defense Mastery... Yep, I'm getting these backwards. Level 3 is Defense Mastery, guys. Don't mind me. Anyway, once you have Defense Mastery, go ahead and flip them to the 1 cost, because those will be reduced down to 0. But look at just this wall of text that is Repair Armor. So much goodness going for it. The helping cans are just kind of a filler card because we're trying to find good cheap cards to play to bring our cost of our deck down so that we consistently be able to play all our cards and get the block going for the team. But like I said, it's vulnerable and block for the team. So Piercing Howl intimidates. These come in. The upgraded version's fairly cheap to craft, and that plus extra vulnerable is a really big deal. It helps keep the vulnerable stacks going and the mark stacks going. Fortify. What else do we do? We cut out the shield charge because we don't want to be... We don't need to be doing damage with Heiner. Same thing with the bluffs. The bluffs would be nice if they're upgraded, but we don't have the shards to upgrade them, and we really... all they are just a filler card when they're upgraded anyway, so we don't really need those. This heat laser is fantastic just for the fact that it applies Fortify, and like I said, Heiner really just requires Fortify. The taunt on himself, you just got to remember to play around that. But that's where these repair armors and intercepts come in. If you're taunted, you just drop them all on yourself. If not, you just throw them on anyone that's fortified or that's going to take like a burn or a shock on their turn. Make sure that you're preventing that damage as much as possible. And really, that's all there is to a Heiner starting deck. We kept the Sunder Armor in because it was cheaper to upgrade it than replace it, and it's actually very playable. I can see an argument for either version. I prefer the 2-cost version. I upgrade to the 2-cost version because energy issues. I could see upgrading to the 3-cost version to hit a monster. Leaving it this way is fine as well. I rarely will play the 3-cost version because I always have at least something I want to play. Upgrading these repair armors to 0 is a big deal, though, because we're still a little over our budget. Oh, shake it off. That's the last thing. Dispel. Dispels are good. Dispels on front line, really big deal. Shake it off. You just make sure you play it as the last card that you play for the turn, and it doesn't matter that it discards a card. Because the order doesn't matter. Playing this as your last card is never a bad thing, so just play it last and it'll be good for you. It's very important to upgrade it early on. The Dispel 3 goes a lot deeper than the Dispel 2. If you don't feel that way, go play the Dispel 2 a couple times and find that, man, I really just wish it would dispel one more debuff. Anyway, that's it for cards. Let's check out the talents of the Heiner. So, Tanky Heiner, we're going to be going Steelforge. This is probably the best survival card in the game. You do have to, I believe, fully block to make it trigger. There's been a couple times it's not worked that way, so it's questionable a little bit. Just applying block and fortify to the entire team is going to set your team very pretty for a very long time. Defense Mastery, of course, reducing the cost of our defense cards, big deal. Last Guardian versus Fusion Lasers, applying vulnerable to everyone is really nice. This is it is last 4 uses, so it does go between turns. So this is actually a very playable card just to apply vulnerable. Last Guardian is very nice. The plus fortify charges is nice. Honestly, you don't necessarily need it, but this whole plus 20 resistances is really the reason you're going to be playing Last Guardian. So it's really nice if you don't have enough armor on Heiner yet, or if you just really are running into him dipping too low in his actual health pool. This Last Guardian is really nice. Otherwise, Fusion Lasers is nice. Just hey, I want to put a vulnerable on the enemy team, especially if you have any sort of additional vulnerable, because this isn't showing the vulnerable charge that warriors have, so it's really too vulnerable. And if you have anything else to play into that, that's great. Level 5, both are viable. I usually go Indomitable, but once you get into level 5, you'll have a good idea of which one you want to play more than the other. And yeah. Equipment, the biggest thing is going to be block charges, fortified charges, and just basic all resist for Heiner. You want him to be able to survive that opening salvo without dipping too low. The pet on warriors is basically always you're going to want Sharpie just for more dispel. It's a little less valuable on Heiner because the plus speed doesn't help him as much as it does on Magnus, but the dispel is super powerful. You could also go with the new Orbi pet just to apply more block every turn to him. And yeah, that should be a bit for Heiner. Apologize for a little babbling there, but if you have any questions, let me know, and I will